Hi, welcome everyone. We'll just give it a couple of minutes to let people join in and then we'll get started soon. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Careers Utilizing AI Career Panel hosted by the UW Alumni Association and the UW Career Internship Center. My name is Christy, and I'm a current master's student in the Human-Centered Design and Engineering program and the grad intern for the UW Alumni Association, and I will be your moderator for today's session. So, for today's panel, we will be starting off with some questions that we've prepared first, and then we will open it up to the audience. We ask that you stay muted throughout the entire session, and if you have any questions, then please make sure to send it through the Zoom's Q&A feature. Also, if you notice that there's any question that is similar to the one that you wanted to ask, but it's already been submitted, then just go ahead and upvote the question on the Q&A feature instead of repeating the question. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get started by having our panelists introduce themselves. So if you can please share your name, pronouns, UW graduation year, and major. And we will start off with Brandon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brendan Keene. I use he, him pronouns. I graduated the UW School in 2023 with a concentration in human-computer interaction.
Hi, I'm Jared Reimer. I'm he, him, and I graduated from computer science in 1998 undergrad and a master's in 2001.
Hi everyone, I am Megan Dofars. I graduated I use she, her pronouns. I graduated in 2021 with a degree in finance and information systems from Foster.
And hey everyone, my name is Trevor. I use he, him pronouns, and I graduated in 2019 with a degree in math and finance.
Great, so thank you so much for those intros. So for our first question, why did you choose your major or your program or field of study? And we will start off with Jared.
Well, that was easy. I only applied to one school and I only applied to one program. I knew at a very early age that I was interested in computers and programming, and I applied to the U when I was 16 and started when I was 17. So I had a very, clear straight line path to it. I think that's probably a bit unusual, but no, I knew going in exactly what I wanted to do.
For me, I have quite the opposite journey as Jared. I honestly didn't really know what I wanted to study. I came into UW wanting to study bio. I switched a few times and I ended up actually choosing my major in finance because I got a finance internship at Dell. And then I was like, well, I'm stuck studying finance because I told them that's what I was going to study. And then I added on the IS because I was like, I probably should get a little bit more exposure into areas that isn't just finance, just because I'm not positive I want to do this. So quite the opposite.
For me, I kind of grew up in a finance household. I thought I wanted to go into a quantitative finance role after undergrad. And so I knew I kind of needed, a finance background and then also either like a math or computer science background. And at the time, really enjoyed a lot of the math concepts and math classes that I was taking. So that kind of led me down the math and finance double degree route.
My why I chose human computer interaction is a bit of a long story, but the short of it is I transferred to UW halfway through my undergrad because I wanted to study specifically human computer interaction. And there's only about four different schools across the country that offer an undergrad program for human computer interaction. Um, I think what's maybe a bit more interesting is why I wanted to study that because people were like, what is this? Are you like what kind of degree is that? People are still kind of confused about it, but I can get into that later. Um, I have always been I've been good at the engineering side of stuff, but I really care a lot about how people interact with technology. I've troubleshooted and problem solved a bunch of different things for friends and family, and I'm sure a lot of people have been in a similar role. But for me, it's like I want to figure out why, and I want to figure out how to prevent that, the issues that I see and I fix for other people. I want to prevent those in the software that I build. So yeah, I got into human computer interaction because I am interested in humans interacting with computers.
So it seems like we have a pretty good mix of different programs here. So, what was your first introduction to AI in your field? And we will start this question off with Megan.
Yeah, so my first introduction to AI wasn't necessarily in my field. Coming out of college, what I actually did was I did a professional development program with the National Basketball Association because I was really interested in sports. And from there, I was exposed to AI through some basketball strategy modeling. And so but with my field I'm currently in, which is marketing within Microsoft, I would say that like I was just exposed as a result of being in roles that touched AI, and I've kind of gained like a program management background through those experiences, and that's kind of led me to where I am today.
I guess for me, it was my first job out of college was working as a data scientist for a real estate lending company. So the first introduction I had to AI wasn't what you all probably think of when you hear AI now. Back then, generative AI wasn't really, I mean, it was a thing, but like very, very less well known. Um, so my first introduction was actually more on the like traditional machine learning side. So think like like a fraud classification model, for example, where it's like classifying transactions as like fraudulent or not fraudulent. So really kind of going back to like the basics of traditional machine learning was how I got my first introduction into the AI data science space.
I'd say similar. Pre-generative AI, I worked on the very first Nest thermostat. And one of the magical things about the thermostat was that it could program itself. And it would do this by learning patterns in your home, like when people would leave, when they were there, how efficient your heating and cooling systems were, what the weather forecast was. And so they used machine learning to programmatically schedule everyone's thermostats. If you wanted it to, it could auto program itself and continuously tune itself based on updated data about your patterns and stuff. So that was my first real world exposure to kind of pre-generative AI. Um, also worked on cloud platform monitoring, where we used predictive analytics and machine learning to study signals coming out of applications and physical devices like servers, and looking for patterns in that data, and then looking for clusters of related signals and anomalies and things like that. So I've been working with the space for a very long time, but obviously then there was the ChatGPT moment and everything changed.
My first my first research job, I was working as a UI UX designer for a research lab that this was pre-chat GPT, but not by much. Um, they were using deep neural networks or they're training neural networks on cognitive behavioral therapy, and they're trying to see if they could facilitate therapy with a chatbot. Now, what we know is that's you're prone to get some AI psychosis going there. So this was like way before that. Like it feels primitive compared to now. I was responsible with designing UI and doing animations. I created like a chatbot avatar. So I did a lot of research into how people interact with chatbots, what they expect from them, how the role of like a character design and avatar and animations fit within it. Um, and then I did my capstone project on ChatGPT because it came out when we're getting into capstone groups. It came out like a couple weeks before it, so it was kind of like a hot new big thing, and did some we did some research, like basic created like an education website for people to like learn more about how this stuff actually works. And then we created a little mini game called Spot the Bot, which is like two truths and a lie, except for it's two pieces of AI written content and one human written piece. And people had to distinguish what was human written, what wasn't. And it actually it did pretty good for training, what's AI written um, at the time. So yeah.
Wow, thanks everyone for sharing. Those are super cool experiences. It seems like most of you really got your foot into the door like as you were working when it came to getting exposed to AI. But did you feel like your major or your programs prepared you for the field? And we'll start off this one with Trevor.
Um, I do. I think to some extent. I think there's kind of like two, depending on how you want to look at it. Like on the generative AI side now, when you're building out a lot of these applications, it's much more software engineering heavy. I didn't study computer science in undergrad, so I didn't have a lot of the necessary like software engineering backgrounds if I were to go into a position like that today. Um, However, on the data science side, like uh, a lot of what these models do under the hood it's just math and statistics. And so if you do want to really get a fundamental understanding of how these models are constructed and like the actual calculations and stuff that happens under the hood with them, when even the models today, like the GPTs and the Claudes and all these other big generative models, they all have somewhat similar architectures. And under the hood, again, it's just math and stats. Um, so yes, like to that extent, if you want to go into, I think, a field where you are primarily focused on like actually building out these foundation models or doing data science or doing research in that area, then 100% you need to have a background in math or stats to some extent.
I would say from computer science. So yes and no. The yes is that you understand a lot about the underpinnings of the platforms that these things run on and the hardware and the operating systems. But no, in the sense that large language models and generative AI are non-deterministic, and they don't use code in the way that every other computer before them did. They're the first bit of technology that's capable of effectively improving itself. So very, very different than what we grew up with. Um, I will say the ability to produce enormous velocity and volumes of excellent code using AI, using generative AI, Having a CS background and understanding the code and how it works and why it works and being able to troubleshoot it is an advantage. I think a lot of folks have tried vibe coding or using AI to generate software and have become frustrated because they don't understand why the resulting software works or doesn't work or how it works. So in that regard, having a development background, I think, is useful. But I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think you absolutely can and probably should consider careers in AI, regardless of whether you've done any software development, programming, computer science, or not. There are an unlimited number of opportunities out there that do not require a engineering or development background.
Yeah, and I totally second what Jared was just saying. I think unlike most of the panelists here, I would probably say I have probably less of a technical background than the majority of them. Like I think honestly, a career in AI, like Jared just said, it doesn't mean you have to be the ones working on the AI models or building the agentic solutions. It could also mean that, you are a product manager, a program manager. Let's help bringing these solutions to life. And so for me, I'd say being in the business program, it taught me the skills to be able to communicate effectively. It taught me, the critical thinking and reasoning skills that help me with my day-to-day job. I wouldn't necessarily say studying finance or studying IS is like the reason why I'm able to do my job today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Human computer interaction is pretty as a discipline tends to be one that resists the development of AI. It's the skeptic and it's the critic throughout all that. And that did make it difficult actually to get work in the field because not only was human computer interaction not as well known. It still isn't as well known of a degree, but the like my knowledge and experience with AI tends to be a lot more critical and skeptical. As for the technical side of stuff, I actually so I started off more on the design side, and I taught myself a lot of the development skills that I have today, because I was tired of my designs when I would hand them off to engineers not looking the way that I wanted and not functioning the way I wanted. So I was like, I'll just do it myself. So it's really, I think, a combination of both. Like I think that the the program that I was in definitely prepared me for kind of the higher level thinking. How does information get structured and organized? And it's some of the more like philosophical questions around AI that I think are proving to be more important now. And people are getting much more into it now. I love seeing the like people engage with those thoughts. But yeah, I think it's just relating back and forth. Like you don't have to get specifically a CS degree to get a job in the field. I think the other panelists really highlighted that well. I think you need to be able to go on both sides of thinking a bit creative and technical to be in any role in this field. So um, that's what I would encourage people to look at.
Yeah, definitely. And so, what advice would you give students wanting to learn more about AI and how to use it? And then we'll start off with Brandon again.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about AI and how to use it, my journey of a lot of like self-teaching and self-education, I did there's a like a pretty big like a machine learning like Coursera course. I think a lot of people have taken it. It's great. The instructor is fantastic. It gives you a really good foundation for like how did all the math get to where we are today. Um, if you are an undergrad, please, please, please take advantage, or if you have a UW email, take advantage of the student discounted rates for any of these models or any of these services. Once that goes away, it goes away, and I'm paying full price for the models that I use now. So there's a lot of opportunities to use these for free. The other thing too that I would say is there's a lot of companies. Right now have a lot of stake on in getting people to learn the stuff that they're building. So they'll offer free courses and certifications so that you can learn their tools. I did LangChain and LangGraph 101. I think that that's a very it's course could be improved, right? And it goes through a lot of stuff really quickly. But looking for stuff like that where you are doing these, like learning new, or like working with like a company's instructional series, is a really good way to like speed up what you learn. And you get a lot of great sample projects out of it that you can start to build your own knowledge, from and play around with and tweak. So that's my advice.
Build
Brendan,
muscle memory every single day. Use the tools. Use the right ones. Like if you're a student or you work at the university, there are approved tools that you should use. Don't go for the crazy stuff out there, but make a point of forcing yourself to work with the tools and use them because it doesn't feel natural at first and you don't know what they can do until you put the work in. Even if they can't do it today, you should assume they probably will in 6 months. So the more that you can make yourself, even just have it proofread your emails, proofread your documents, even if you're just using it as a coach or a cross check, the act of incorporating it into your workflows and into your day-to-day routine, that takes work and effort, but it is absolutely worth it. And you will find very quickly that it can do things that you might not have expected and that you can produce superior outcomes with a lot less toil and time. So,
I really like both of those answers that the panelists just gave. And in response to what, Brendan was saying, this is kind of like a pitch, but not actually not being paid to say this, but Microsoft Learn AI Hub actually has something for like everyone to be able to learn some AI fundamentals. So that's a resource you can go to. But yeah, they're like with AI being around, like there's an infinite amount of resources, like things get generated every day. So find something that works for you, whether it be through LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, whatever. There's always something out there for people as long as they're willing to put in the time to learn about it. The other thing is just similar to what was saying, building habits with using AI. And like for me personally, like in my day-to-day work, I always start out every morning by going into Copilot and saying like, hey, Copilot, like, what are the top emails that I've missed? What are like the highest priority items? And so it just gives me a summary of all of like my work messages of all my emails so that, like I can start the beginning of the day without having to like read through every single missed email. Um, so yeah, lots of ways to incorporate that into your everyday life.
The only other thing I'll add, I think the rest of the panelists pretty much said everything I was gonna say. The only other thing I'll add is, especially for those software engineers out there, use the coding tools, like use Cursor, use Claude Code, use Gemini. Like they will make you 10x more efficient, I promise. And if you actually get to a point where you're able to use these tools pretty efficiently, you'll definitely stand out from some of the other peers that you have. My one note on that is definitely make sure that you are still understanding the code that gets written by these models. Don't just like accept changes without looking at things. You really want to make sure you do still have that fundamental understanding. And that's usually what I see in a lot of the more like enterprise software developments that I see every day is where a lot of teams will use these tools to augment the work that they're doing, not fully replace it. So that being said, you want to definitely make sure that you still have a good grasp of all the code that's being written by these applications. And if you don't, then like ask it to explain itself or like do some research on your own. But definitely use the tools that are out there for software engineering.
Thank you. And I guess considering the current job market and kind of following this train of advice, what advice do you have for students who are trying to land internships or entry-level roles in AI related fields? And we will start this question with Jared.
Portfolio is everything right now. So you have to assume that everybody has a great resume. You have to assume that there are people with experience and great resumes who are out looking as well. And there are large numbers of them for reasons that we won't go into. So I think right now the thing that is most important is your portfolio. Even if they're not work projects, even if they're personal projects, things that demonstrate real world ability and that you've done the work, gotten your hands dirty, built things, operationalized them. Everyone will claim that they know all the things about the AI and whatever else. Prove it. And the way that you prove it, I think, is with exceptional portfolio materials. Those could be online, they could be private, they could be videos, they could be, open source projects, whatever they may be, but have them ready and put them front and center. Because when I look at resumes, that's what stands out to me.
I would say another thing to add on top of that, I agree that a lot of resumes typically look very similar nowadays. So one other piece of advice is network as much as you can. It really, really does help. And um, especially for like when I was an undergrad, I didn't really know all the different types of roles that were even out there or available. The team I lead today, solutions engineering team, we're customer facing. We're basically like technical resources for our customers. I didn't know that position or role existed when I was an undergrad. So do some research, like try and figure out what type of role even interests you. Um, and then reach out to people on like LinkedIn. I know Handshake is available at UW. So reach out to people on Handshake. Use the other resources that you all have available to you to connect with alumni and just ask. Like find people in the positions that sound interesting to you. Reach out to them. See if they'd be open for like a 15-minute Zoom call just to hear about what their role is like. Um, Having that network, that very broad network of people is going to be really beneficial, not just for your first job, but like as you start to kind of advance in your career. Having a very strong network across different companies, different industries, is going to be really, really crucial, especially as everyone is kind of building a similar skill set.
I guess you can't really get an internship or a job without going through the interview process. And I will say this is kind of like top of mind for me because I've seen this happen recently. But with AI nowadays, there's a lot of like AI interview coaches, software that kind of like helps you during your interview. As someone who has interviewed people, it is very, very obvious when someone is using it. Um, Not just with like the answers that they are providing, but also um, I know someone who just interviewed um, someone for a position at Microsoft, and they had a coding section of their interview. The code looked obviously like way too perfect. That's something that's very easily spottable. So when we say use AI, don't use it for your interview. But definitely if you want, like you can use AI to like help you practice, come up with like good answers. But when it comes to the actual interview, stay away from it. Just be natural, be yourself, and let your experience speak for itself.
I think all of this advice is really fantastic. It's advice that I've taken quite personally. I think the only thing I have to add is my experience with um, being a recent graduate in this current tech environment. So for reference, my I have an older brother. He graduated the year before me. His path from graduation to work was he had an internship after his junior year. So summer of junior year going into senior year, he had an internship. In the fall, he was applying for jobs and he was given an offer and he started that job like, within the summer of graduating. My experience was very, very different. I made it to final rounds for internships my junior or going into senior year summer. I did not get an internship that I was looking for. I was past the last round. And so that stung. And then I went to like I kept on applying for jobs. I did not get a job. I did not get an offer before graduating. It took me almost 2 years after graduating to land my first role. And that was I was working other jobs. That's when I started adding skills, more technical skills, because I wanted a job as a UI UX designer at the time. Uh, they stopped hiring UI UX designers, especially junior UI UX designers, some time ago. I mean, you might find roles, but it's a very saturated field. I needed to find a job and a role that had a skill set that not as many people had. So I went hard into using my technical background, human computer interaction stuff, and just went and learned as much about generative AI and skills around it as possible. Um, in terms of finding a job, I can only say that I got lucky. There's no rhyme or reason to how it happened. I applied to tons of jobs on LinkedIn. I applied on company websites. I worked with recruiters. I went through all of it. It was just some random startup, some that I might have applied for. They might have reached out to me. But once you have an interview with like an actual human, it's game on. That's the other thing I'll say. It's really difficult out there. If you are struggling to find internships and jobs right now, especially right out of college, know that like it's not just you, it's everyone. There is a weird reskilling and like reallocation of stuff going on, and companies are not taking chances on recent graduates in the same way that they used to. And I wish I had something more optimistic to say than that, but it is really difficult out there. So don't be too hard on yourself. And if you really want to get a job in this field, um, like you might get lucky and it works out quickly, but you might not. And being ready for any outcome like that is important. It's not you, it's not your skill, it's not the quality of work you're doing in a lot of senses. It's sometimes just right place, right time. So that's what I have to say about finding work right now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's been something that a lot of people have been wondering about, so I appreciate all of your advice. And I guess to follow up with that, with AI constantly evolving, how would you recommend people trying to stay up to date with all of the new and latest trends? And we'll start this with Megan.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, like I said, lots of resources out there. And depending on if you're following the right people who, will opine on certain topics within AI, I think even being on LinkedIn, connecting with those people that have those thoughts and share them, like that's honestly a great way to stay up to date. There's AI is just such like a prevalent topic nowadays that it's almost in like mainstream news as well. So even being aware of the trends broadly is good for someone who is, a student right now, just trying to like get their toes wet in the industry. But yeah, just doing some reading in your spare time, I guess.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think social media is actually helpful for this with how quickly the space moves. A topic that may be relevant today might be outdated like a week and a half from now. So yeah, I think following some people, some companies on LinkedIn, Twitter is actually a weirdly good source of information that a lot of folks in the AI space tend to post stuff. And then there's also some newsletters out there. There's a couple that I subscribe to. One is through I think it's deeplearning.ai. But there's a bunch of great newsletters that will show up in your inbox like once a week. So it's not a ton of extra reading that you have to do on a regular basis. But you can kind of like pick and choose which ones you want to sign up for based off of like how deep you want to go from a technical standpoint. Um, but yeah, I'd say like social media and newsletters is primarily how I stay up to date.
I would say that I just like a word of caution in general. There's a lot of people making AI related content right now. Um, it's very easy to feel very overwhelmed by it. I think that seeing what I would say is like, if you are finding people making content or talking about AI, how they use it, the workflow itself is more important than kind of vague generalizations. Like make sure that what you're learning is something that maybe is like tangible. There's a lot of uh I guess stuff more catered towards engagement. Um the other thing too is read the dev blogs and like the boring stuff, the documentation on these kind of bigger model providers. I mean, they have people that are kind of trying to write and sell the stuff that they're building. And so they're going to tell you what's at their cutting edge. I think that that's a really good place to start. And then beyond that, Jared mentioned this earlier, but just play with stuff. Like anything that you can get your hands on and play around with. Nothing is going to be, or like there is no magic button someone's going to press where they have like this perfect AI. Like AGI is not going to show up out of nowhere, is what I guess I'm saying. Um, just play with stuff, see where it's great, see where it sucks, and figure out what you like about it, what you don't, and be critical of all of it. All of this stuff, everything's worthy of criticism right now. So be critical of all of it, and that will put you, I think, in a really good spot to stay up to date with what's going on.
Okay, and the last question that we have before we're opening it up to the audience is what human skills do you believe are becoming more important as AI becomes more capable? And we'll start this with Trevor.
Um, yeah, I think there's kind of two things I'll mention. One is what I already mentioned previously, which is like networking, building relationships with people, still super, super important. At the end of the day, like business is still conducted by humans. The relationships you make with not only people within like your close network, but also again, like expanding that network into people in similar roles in different industries and companies you want to work for. Go do as many like coffee chats, go to alum or career fairs, like just meet new people. So highly recommend doing that. And then the other is, again, kind of going back to what some of the other panelists discussed earlier. Um, if you are using these like coding tools, especially in the software engineering space, make sure to still be able to think critically about kind of like higher level concepts, like actually what the system architecture looks like, how you should design the solution, rather than focusing on like the details of how certain, pieces of code should be written. So kind of focusing on more of like a big picture, higher level uh, strategy, I think is going to be pretty important for folks who are especially using AI in a lot of their day-to-day workflows.
I'll take a swing at that one. So, Jensen Huang, the father of NVIDIA and most AI hardware as we know it, has this quote, and I'll probably get it not quite right. Uh, IT is the HR of the agents. Okay. So in the future, the role of IT, of software developers, of project managers and program managers, of product owners is to serve as the HR of a growing number of agents many of which will be highly specialized at doing tasks that previously would have been done by humans. And the ability to orchestrate, coordinate, divide and conquer, to harness agentic AI to achieve business outcomes will be what differentiates people that are 1x performers or 10x performers in the future. So with software development, there used to be people that were they just had a knack for it and they could write 10x the code of normal developers. In the agentic AI world, it is not that. It is your ability to take the business problem, decompose it, come up with an agentic solution that will involve more than one agent in the future. That is really, I think, what's going to stand out and what's going to give people a leg up. And the earlier that you familiarize yourself with that, because it does take some learning and experimentation, the better. Even if it's just for hobbies, for a side project, for portfolio material, things like Crew AI. If you haven't come across Crew AI, let you build multi-agent systems, and it's very different than just talking to a chatbot. So the future is very quickly going to shift away from chatbots being kind of the 1.0 of AI interface to agentic AI. And that's going to happen this year. It's going to happen very swiftly because there's a lot of things that are coming to maturity that are needed for that to happen. So just as the web browser and the web essentially obliterated Telnet and FTP, for those old enough to remember what those are, the agentic AI era will largely replace the chatbot era. And it's much better to be ahead of that curve and to be familiar with it and to have experience with it. You do not want to be behind that one.
I I have a very simple answer for this. It's writing. I think that your ability to communicate with text, with, in paragraphs, long form, short form, anything like that is in my opinion, in my day-to-day workflow, it is the most important skill that I am constantly being very critical about and working on. And it's for one reason only. It is because any time that you're working with an AI system right now, whether it is Claude Code or Cursor or anything like that, you're writing text, you're writing sentences to instruct it what to do. Now, the quality of your writing and the clarity of your writing, especially in these technical contexts, directly impacts the quality of what the model returns to you. If you are good at explaining what your issue is, what documents you are talking about, what components you're talking about, everything about your actual problem, you're going to get a many times better solution. So, I think that there are some people that are a bit of a side note, but some people are concerned about the environmental impact of AI. I see a solution, or I see a like kind of a middle road where if we just take a little bit longer to write highly detailed prompts, if we take a second to actually break down what we're even asking these agents to do before we press send, we're gonna stop wasting a lot of these tokens. It's improved my workflow. It's prevented me from hitting usage limits. Take a second longer. Make sure you're writing clearly and communicating. And that writing transfers beyond just working with agents. That's how you communicate with people on Slack. That's how you email. That's how you write blog posts. That's how you do everything. The world of writing good text is I think more important right now than it was in the past. And I think it's something that people will let go to the wayside because it's easy to generate text. So just don't ignore good writing. Good writing is so, so important. And you don't want to sound like ChatGPT. Trust me, people hate it. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and then some advice from me, I'd say, like, the communication piece is so important. You're going to be able to develop a really amazing model. You're going to be able to create a really great agentic solution, but how are you going to pitch that to leadership? How are you going to make it so everyone knows about this great solution that you've built? So that's number one. I'd say number two is whether pre the AI world and even in the AI world, I think being a self-starter is so important. And what especially as someone who would be like coming new to as a new grad or coming into a new space, just being able to show that you're unafraid to take on some challenges or be able to deal with some ambiguity in your work, that's really important. And in order to do that, you just need to be a self-starter. You need to be able to be unafraid to go find the answers, or if you don't know the answer, go talk with someone, go talk with multiple people about how you can figure out the solution. So yeah, lots of soft skills, whether you're in the AI space or not, that are transferable.
Wow, thank you everyone for that great advice. So now we're going to go ahead and open up the questions to the audience. And so the first question is, how do you actually build a network and maintain it in LinkedIn? Do I have to chat randomly with people in the field of interest on a recurring basis? And we will start off with Jared.
I would say definitely not random chat with random people regularly. That's not the right way to do it. So probably first, there's different modes of use, right? And following the right people and kind of engaging with their content so that you see more of it is the most high value thing you can do. A very small percentage of individuals in particular on LinkedIn produce incredibly insightful, valuable content, especially in the AI field. And I have my list, and I'd be happy to share it with anybody after if they want. There are a few people that are really good at explaining what's going on and what's happening and putting it in context. So building the list of people you follow and curating that is very important, and actually following up on it. Much more useful than TikTok, by the way, 1,000 times more so. And then there's your network, right? And I think that's something you have to put the work into every single day. Your classmates, your teachers, your people that you meet along the way, if you're interviewing, if you go to a conference. It's not awkward or rude. And if someone declines to connect, that's not an insult. Some people are very guarded and they do not want a large number of connections. You can still follow them. Some people are willing to connect with just about anybody. One thing to be aware of, though, there are a disturbing number of fake people that will try to connect with you. Those are data harvesters, and they use that to impersonate you, identity theft, what have you. So you do need to validate if someone does offer to connect, like, does this look credible? For example, if it says they're a senior executive recruiter and they've been doing it for 30 years and they have 19 connections on LinkedIn, that's a bot. That's not a person, because that person's going to have 19,000 connections. So you can quickly kind of eyeball their posts, their activity, their longevity on the platform. Do that diligence. Do not just randomly connect with anybody for the sake of getting the numbers up, because you will find yourself on the wrong end of identity theft if you do that. But also don't shy away from it, right? Like, I think I have about 5,000 connections, and some of them are very close friends, and some of them I've only met once in passing. But there's still value in even weak links to an extensive network like that. Definitely worth the effort. It's the only social network I use and the only one that I would bother using at this point.
I don't think I have much else to add to that. Yeah, I would just double down on the point of like actually putting in the work and the effort to do it yourself. Go to career fairs, like go to as many of these networking events as you can. I know it can be a little scary. Like I've been there, I've done it myself, and felt it myself. But yeah, you kind of have to, no one's going to be able to do that work for you. So the effort you put in is what you'll get out of it. So definitely, try to go to as many of those like in-person events, especially as you can.
Oh, the other thing, always come bearing a gift. There is nothing worse than a LinkedIn in-mail from someone you don't know that says, I want to sell you something, and here's a Calendly link, and go ahead and book yourself on my calendar. A cold opener from someone you don't know telling you to go spend your time booking a slot to hear their sales presentation, totally the wrong approach. If you want to engage with somebody that you don't know and you can't get an introduction, you should come with something of value, even if it's a question or an idea. Like, hey, I had this question and I was really hoping you could help me out. Or I have this idea and I saw your expertise and I wanted to quickly see if you could just give me a few thoughts on the idea. That's still a gift. What you don't do is just say, connect with me and book yourself on my calendar. Like that, I always block those every single time. And if LinkedIn had a filter that said Calendly in particular, if I could block every message that had Calendly, I would block them all because it is almost invariably spam. So please be really careful. That initial first contact is really delicate. And I believe you should come with some gift, even if the gift is just the gift of a question that's relevant and that's worth their time.
Thank you. And then the next question that we had was, in your own work, what parts actually feel unique because of AI, and what part is still just core thinking, writing, decision making, etc., that exists in many other fields?
I I'm sorry, I didn't hear what was said there.
Sure, I can repeat it. In your own work, what?
Or I don't know if it's on my end, but
I think
Oh,
it might be on your end, Brendan, because
oh, I can hear you.
oh,
oh, hello?
Oh, I
I,
can hear you now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. So, in your own work, what parts actually feel unique because of AI, and what part is still just core thinking, writing, decision making, etc., that exists in many other fields?
Um, in the world of software, I will say that I can answer the second part quite well. The first part I think is interesting, and maybe I'll get an answer to it by the time I finish answering the second part. But the second part is you will not believe how much of just the internet and just software in general is just it's forms. It's forms. All of its forms and checkboxes and drop-down menus and forms. And it's just because that's the easiest way for us to visually like edit like a data structure. So no matter what's happening, there's just going to be a form, profile settings, that sort of stuff. And it's be familiar with it because it's going to show up and it's good to be adept at so you don't have to like spend too much mental energy doing it because it's not fun. No one likes doing it. But it's a big part of it. The part that's unique about AI, I think it really is that our like what's good and what is effective and what makes sense right now. It's still very up in the air and but I think that it's really cool how a lot of people are having I think that they call it like uh basically like people are arriving to the same conclusion from separate places like in parallel and part of that was like uh you start to realize that the more you engage with these tools the things that you're doing likely that are just simplifying your life there's a chance that someone's working on a feature to make that like more automatic. Like that's happened with me and like I had like specific AI related instructions and like sort of knowledge graph like sort of custom stuff that I added to my own development setup. And then um, like a couple of like Claude Code patches later, like there it was integrated within Claude Code. So it's like, okay, like I don't need the stuff that I built that's like kind of flimsy and temporary. So I think it's cool seeing how like what or like people are figuring this out together as a collective, and there is kind of a consensus on what's effective. So it's cool to be a part of that, I would say. So yeah.
I'd say for me, so much of my work revolves around AI just because the nature of the role. Like my role is to help figure out what the future of agentic AI looks like from, I guess, the Microsoft space. And I mean, day in and day out, I am hearing about all the different agents and solutions that are being built, but I'm not, like I'm not the one building the agent. But for me, the critical thinking of, hey, how can these agents interact with each other? Or the being able to put together and say, oh, these agents actually are doing the same thing. This is a redundancy. Like it doesn't make sense for us to continue working on this if someone else already has a better version of this agent. Like those type of skills you can get from, not studying AI per se, right? So the decision making, like you said in that question, that's all still there. But I would say just the exposure and the topic of just agentic AI is what makes that role that I'm in unique.
Thank you. And then for our last question, what are the top roles that you see in your own work where people with different backgrounds can contribute meaningfully without becoming hardcore coders and engineers? Megan already answered this a bit earlier, but wondering if other panelists can expand on that a bit more.
I think human-centered design is a very hot topic right now. Human-machine interface, very important. Learning to work with the agents, learning to harness their capabilities, learning how to responsibly apply this technology. I think the universe of opportunities for people that are able to take big, complicated, sometimes ambiguous problems or questions and break them down into smaller chunks and then task agentic AI with helping to solve those smaller pieces. Those are going to be the folks that are really going to succeed. And that does not require a software engineering or even any kind of engineering background. It's more about being able to focus on objectives rather than on tasks, right? So the more you elevate your work to the, what is the business objective or outcome that we're trying to achieve, or what's the answer we're trying to arrive at, or what's the data we're trying to produce, or the result that we're trying to stimulate. AI can help you do the legwork. What it's not as good at is thinking through what needs to be done. It's getting better though. So it's moving up the ladder in terms of reasoning capabilities and abstraction. But the trick is to always stay two steps ahead of it so that it's working for you and you're not working for it. And I think those skills really are not tied to any one discipline. It's more a way of thinking and the ability to differentiate between like toil and tactical work and the 20% of the work that's really strategic that leads to AI doing the other 80% to some significant degree for you in the future.
Yeah, to add on to what Jared said, I think even if you do want to go into the space of like building out or helping build out agentic applications or AI applications, you don't necessarily need a software engineering background. There are a lot of like product managers, for example, who don't have or don't come from a CS or an engineering background in general, and they are, their main goal is to understand the business and the user requirements for a particular product or feature within an application. And so they're really kind of thinking about it like, what is the end user experience going to look like? And then they translate that into maybe it's writing prompt templates for the application, or it's writing evaluation templates where you are trying to actually evaluate the output of what these non-deterministic systems are producing for your end users. So there are a lot of roles too that you can look into if you do want to be in the like building space that don't necessarily require that like deep technical background either.
I just to add to it because I'm seeing also like a question too that is interesting, which is how can someone use AI in fields like anthropology? And I think it kind of relates to this question as well, about like roles that can use it effectively. Um, I would say that in general, there's going to be a lot of different ways that you can use AI. And there's a lot of different products that make it easier, more difficult to use it. Um, for someone like me, I like to be able to see the code itself and see all of the numbers and like the exact specific parameters that I'm putting in. Like I'm very detailed. Like I want to get into the nitty gritty and know every single thing that's possible and not possible. But that doesn't solve most issues that AI can help with. Like I think that there's a lot of really good visual editors. There's a lot of like different ways of using AI in your own work. And then the question about anthropology, it's difficult to say like what the job title is that can use AI effectively will be. Because I think that there are a lot of job titles and a lot of people that just haven't figured that out yet. But what I will say is that what language models and AI right now is really good at is it's really good at working through large amounts of information really quickly and helping sort, filter, and organize it. This is quite unique. This is kind of more of like if we want to get into the information science of it all. It's instead of like I think everyone can remember like if you look on Google, or if you Google search something and you're like, I want to see this, but don't show me that. Like for things that I don't know might have a similar label, it doesn't understand the word "don't" well, or like it doesn't understand like the negative stuff well. But language models understand what "don't" or "no" or like without actually mean. So if you can find a way to process a lot of information with kind of more that ambiguity of natural language, it can apply to like all sorts of different fields. And I think anthropology, like studying how, or like you could study a lot of information that humans have created and generate sentiment analysis. You can identify keywords, you can identify like common, like stuff that Command F might not be good enough for. You could start to pull out that information that is a little bit more softer on the edges. So that's I think maybe it doesn't quite answer it, the question, but I think it might get you thinking about it a bit more. I don't know.
Wow, thank you all so much for all of your really great insights and advice. I know that I learned a lot, especially as someone from like the UX background, so I really appreciate your time. So that's a wrap for our panel. Thank you all again for our panelists for taking the time to share all of this information with us. They've so generously shared their LinkedIns in the chat, so feel free to connect with them. And we also included a little document that shows like their background and their information as well. But thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Mhm. I hope everyone has a good
Yeah.
night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.